officer and combat veterans advocate for veterans.
I'm Paula Kemp, founder and president of Veteran Sisters.
My military service that got me started in all of this began in 1968. I had lost a friend in Vietnam and thought I had to go, so I did. I was married and had a child, and I volunteered anyway. I ended up in the Army, and in 11 months I was an airborne ranger, staff sergeant E6, off to Vietnam. I served my 12 months there. I was fairly well decorated, if you will, Silver Star, Bronze Star, Air Medal, those kinds of things. I got out of the service and tried to go back to work, couldn't get my old job back because I had a hearing loss and other issues. So I had to take a different job. Ended up in a oil refinery, then found myself in the car business and ended up burying my father at a young life. He was a World War II veteran and he died. My mom needed help with the claim and I began to help her in 1979. Finding out that I had much of the same problems as my own father and I was helping my mother with her claim, I realized I was one of those, PTSD guy. And there was no one around to help. I was off on my own. I couldn't figure out the paperwork. I didn't know the rules. I didn't know the jargon. I didn't know what they were looking for as I went for help, totally on my own. And I swore as I was going through the process, if I ever finished, that I would start helping other veterans with their claims. It was just something that needed to be done, and I found something I was good at. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. I started this plight about 1995 and never looked back. I loved changing other people's lives. I loved getting involved with them and their families, learning about them, learning about the things they went through. For a long time in my military life, I thought that I was doing the most dangerous job out there and the war was all about me and guys like me, and that was the farthest from the truth. It takes everybody effort in a war, and I learned that everybody needs recognition. A lot of veterans do the job, but they get no recognition, and that causes problems in and of itself. We have exposures, chemical exposures, we have other injuries, hearing losses, we have emotional traumas, PTSD, depression, lots of things that we have to face we know nothing about. Most of us were young kids when we started, and now here we are trying to battle our way through life and be accepted in the community and in society. But where do we turn for that help? If we go to the VA, they'll put us off. If we go to the VA, they'll deny us. If we go to the VA, they'll give us some kind of hocus pocus that they have a new snake oil. And it's every week. It's not every month or every year. Every week they come up with a new claim of being able to cure everything with one pill. It's this pill and that pill and the next pill and this shot and that shot and this medication and this meditation, this song. Play this music and you go to sleep. It's crazy. So the process is quite confusing. Where do you begin, with paperwork or with people? And what I found was if you could get close to the person and have enough time with them to hear their story really told us where we were going to begin. And like Paula here, Paula came to me looking for someone to help. She'd already been involved in her claim. She'd already educated herself a little bit, and she knew that the help she was getting wasn't right. She knew it wasn't quite correct. She didn't feel right about it, and it reminded me of where I was when I was involved in the claim. And so she was a natural to sit up and take notice with. I had other women that I had helped in the past, and I found that I was the one that was a little short on knowledge. I didn't really know how to address women in the claims process. It was difficult because I'm a man, they're a woman, they have to tell me the inside story that a lot of people don't want to hear, and I was...
Thank you, Ronnie. Yes, you know, when we met, I was very much struggling. I was in the darkness with the claims process. Had been battling, I want to say a year or two before I finally found you. And thanks to Fast Eddie and the biker club here, the American Legion Riders, having a ride, and that was what invited me to come out and get to meet you guys. So that was pretty awesome. As you know, I was a combat photographer in the Navy, and I started off as a reservist. So I was a mother with 3 children, and when my youngest started kindergarten, I decided that it was my turn, and I didn't want to just sit at home and do nothing, so I went and investigated the reserves, and the Navy took me, even though I was an old lady, and I had to jump through some hoops in order to make that happen, but I was determined, and I told my husband at the time, I said, I'm joining, you can handle the kids 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks out of the year, and off I went. So I did pretty well on the exams, the MEPs and all that, and got to kind of pick what I wanted to do. And I had done some modeling when I was younger and thought, yeah, I'll be a photographer, and not knowing that it was a combat photographer position. That's hilarious because I knew nothing about the military and decided to be a combat photographer. So it actually ended up being a duck to water. I absolutely loved it. I loved that I got to interact with people, and when I had that camera around my head, around my neck, I was very well trained and very blessed to have a great reserve unit that took me under their wing and taught me not only to be a good photographer, but to be a good sailor. So I just ran with it. I ended up getting in before 9/11, and once 9/11 happened, I was pretty much gone a lot. I would volunteer for anything and everything. I was lucky enough that my kids were old enough by then that I could pick up and go, and I did. And so I went off to combat photography school and other exercises and trainings. I went to the Middle East, and you kind of know my whole story as far as my journey in the Navy. I experienced a few things while I was in the Navy. You know, being a female in a male-dominated system, kind of already knew that, you know, just growing up from childhood on up, you know, there's some challenges just being a female in day-to-day life. But, you know, in the military, I loved just being one of the guys, and I worked very hard at trying to fit in and be one of the guys. So I had a situation happen while I was on one of my trainings, and was raped, and I just pushed it down and didn't let anybody know what had happened. I was alone with the journalist and nobody from my unit, but I was there by myself. So if I would have told any of my brothers in my unit, they would not have allowed me to continue doing the job that I did, and I thoroughly enjoyed. So I never told anybody, plus I was married and I didn't want him to know because he really didn't appreciate what I was doing by being a young mother and out reservist, you know. So anyway, then when I went to the Middle East, that was when a lot of stuff started surfacing. And when I came home, I needed to know what I wanted to claim. Instead, you had conversations with me and asked me, you know, my journey. And so I told you I didn't have a DD-214, you hopped all over that. You know, I told you about the different physical ailments that I was having, and then we talked about my PTSD. And I told you about my experience in the Middle East and the nightmares from that, and I was embarrassed about that. I didn't feel that it was bad enough to be causing all this anger. And there was something that in that conversation, I just remember you saying to me, I want to ask you something, and you asked my permission if we could talk about it, and I already felt so super comfortable talking to you, and you asked me, had I ever had a sexual trauma while I was in the military? And I had never told anybody. And I told you, and I was like, yes. And you had seen it, you know, just from the conversations. And you told me that you had started having other female veterans sent to you or referred to you, and you were starting to become aware of this MST. And we kind of talked about that. And then you asked me if I would be comfortable sitting in with you when you were having these conversations with these other ladies, in hopes that it would make them feel more comfortable. And in the long run, I think it made you feel more comfortable too.
Right.
So that's kind of what really launched Veteran Sisters, was both of us seeing this awareness for the need for the female camaraderie, the female companionship, or the safety of buddies, of sitting in together. And the need for the services to even be, female to female. There's just a easier conversation to be had on both sides. So just as you experienced with being the male wanting to interact and help the female, there was a challenge there. It didn't flow as easy as if I sit down and I talk to my sister and have the conversation, or if it's a female doctor, female therapist, things like that. Usually, not always, but usually there's a little bit more of a comfort ability there. And the same thing for the guys sitting down with the guys. They're going to be able to chat with the guys much more comfortable and not have to worry about what they say and offend and things like that. So that's really what brought about the awareness for both of us, I think, in creating Veteran Sisters. So in the process, though, I mean, you were my mentor. So you, by walking the walk with me, you taught me how to walk the walk with my sisters. And not only my sisters, but I've helped brothers too. So you laid down a foundation without even realizing it, just by being who you are and representing how you wanted to be represented. I do the same thing. I represent the way that you represented me, and you represented me the way that was best for me. So now we both kind of have taken that forward in creating our nonprofits. You, of course, many years in the making. And then I did want to also mention that the importance that you instilled in me from the very beginning of not going at it alone, the importance of having somebody there. You wanted to be there with me every step of the journey. And, that was really hard for me to want to inconvenience you, and I didn't want to take you away from others that needed you more than I did. So I thought that, how am I ever going to be able to help my sisters and encourage them to file a claim, especially with MST, when they were raped in the military or sexually assaulted in the military? How am I going to support them to come forward and file a claim in a system that is going to assault them again? And you were so good at that with sharing with me once again the importance of not quitting, because you always picked me up and kept me going every time I got a denial. And then with this too, it was, okay, so you learned your lesson, and let's go, let's move forward. We've got to press charges against this. We got to take it, we got to handle it, but you're not alone in handling it. We're going to do it together. And we did, didn't we? Yeah. Yes, we did. He's in hot water right now and going through a legal system, and will never touch another veteran again. And that's because of the strength of knowing that you were there for me, and now that we get to be there for Veteran Sisters, and your organization as well, with Veterans Paying It Forward, which is really, we're just a family together, moving forward and helping our veterans.
Something that you did going through the entire process was learning, and you always seemed to have the grasp of the situation. To make that one mistake will stick with you for a lifetime, and the mistake is trying to trust, and you can't. You cannot put your guard down in the system. The system is not there necessarily to help a veteran, The system is there just as it's just there. They don't take the time to be careful with the veteran, man or woman. They just do what they want to do, and when you get some crazy guy that wants to touch people instead of help people, then this kind of thing happens. And we have it in other areas as well, just telling the truth about what's wrong with the veteran. You know, we have guys, men, women, that have their own ideas about what they want to put in writing as opposed to doing the right thing. It's not always because somebody is going to be molested, but it is because that the person needs to do the right thing that's doing the examination. So Paula, when you came to me, you were very much educated. You just knew things weren't quite right. That you weren't getting all the information you should get. You'd already received some negative information back from the VA, and we were a good team together, and that you were giving me information that I was unfamiliar with. You're a woman, I'm a man. There were some things I was somewhat uncomfortable talking about, but you helped me through that. And you helped me see that I needed to adjust myself dealing with women. And Paula, I thank you now and forever for that. As we moved forward, you were always learning and you were always sharing. I used to go to the CMP, comp and pension exams with you. I went to the DRO hearings with you. I even went to your regular medical care. We went to the VA hospital to organize your treatment. And that was a big help for me to step into that with women. Men are a little bit different. You have some different emotional issues, some different kinds of injuries, and women have other more specific injuries that are personal to them, and you were able to work with me through that. I think we came to know together that women need a little different environment. They don't need a man standing over them telling them what to do. They need someone to go along with them and share the experience of what happened and to give that comfort. And I have to say that I learned so much. I realized I'd rather have a helpmate like yourself doing this than me doing it. I can do the paperwork, but when it comes to being emotionally ready to deal with the other gender, I wasn't there. And I really appreciated you stepping forward later and taking on the role of the veteran sister. And it's heartwarming to know that I didn't just help change one life, I helped probably thousands. As you learned in that error by going to an examination without somebody accompanying you, we ran into some strange fellow that wanted to touch instead of help people. And it's a lesson that all veterans should learn. It's not that we would or should expect to be molested by going in to an interview for your examination, but there are other things that can happen. The person doing the examination might have a preconceived idea about what they want to put in paper, and there should be a witness. Yeah. You know, the examiner can literally put down anything they want to, and the veteran needs a witness. They need to have someone back them up that this wasn't said or that wasn't said or this was said. It needs to be there, and that's the reason that we have this system for the veterans. We need to explain and educate the veteran as they go so they can pay it forward and help someone else.
I think it makes a difference too when it's another veteran, because when it's a family member, it's a little harder. You know, it's too personal. Mm-hmm. Not that if that's all that they can take with them, then that's equally as important. But I think when it's another veteran, especially when they've been through that, that's what makes a world of difference, at least for veteran sisters. Don't you find it the same?
I do very much so. I love with all my heart being able to help a veteran. And
Me
the
too.
fact that you have helped me be able to reach out and help women veterans, it does my heart good. I've seen the space, I've seen the distance between the women and the men in the military. I didn't see it because I served with women, but I've seen it since being out of the military. There's quite a gap. And then when they get out and have a problem, there's even more of a gap.
Absolutely.
Women are put on the back burner all through our military and through the VA. And when they get into the private sector of life, they're preyed upon even more.
Right.
They become the victim and the easy to get to victim.
Right.
So,
Well, hopefully we get to make a difference in that. I know, I like what you said about, that you've helped so many, but by helping me as just one, you've helped hopefully many, many thousands in
Thousands.
the future. I hope so. I really believe that Veteran Sisters is going to make that difference. It's going to help fill that gap, bring all the services to the veteran, the female veteran and the male veterans alike. So I think it's just bringing that love.
thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Beautiful.